interview with Russell Brand and RFK Jr. And we've been talking about his race for quite a bit. And there were a couple of questions that you guys had in reference to what will he do. So I'm going to talk about this clip from Russell Brand first. And then we're going to go into another clip that was sent to me today by you guys where he answers another question. And you may not like the answer to this question, but at least you'll get your answers. So Russell Brand interviewed RFK Jr. And I thought this was a really good interview. Now, if you want to see the full interview, I recommend watching it on Rumble. The clip that you see on YouTube is not the full clip. They put part of it on YouTube, the full interviews on Rumble, also because of some of the things that they did discuss to be on the safe side. But, Russell Brand comes right out of the gate with important questions that I think a lot of us have had in reference to how they will treat RFK Jr. running through the Democratic Party, especially considering some of his opinions that he has on his platform, and also the fact that he's primary challenging Joe Biden. Like, let's be real. Listen to this first question, because this is pretty revealing, I think.
Why do you think that Joe Biden is unwilling to engage in debate, even though he is not required to for this part of the political process? Why is he unwilling, Robert?
I assume they made a calculation that the debate is not going to be helpful to the president, and that he is a strong enough position now politically that he is strong enough in the polls that he can win. And, the way that the setup of the Democratic Party at the convention, the way the nomination happens, the super delegates are very, very influential, and he'll get 100% of those. So
pause that part right there. Let's go back a little bit. Again, they're talking about the debates.
Biden is unwilling to engage in debate, even though he is not required to for this part of the political process. Why is he unwilling, Robert?
I assume they made a calculation that the debate is not going to be helpful to the president, and that he is a strong enough position now politically that he is strong enough in the polls that he can win. And, the way that the setup of the Democratic Party
So that piece right there, RFK Jr. says that Joe Biden probably knows that the debates are not going to be helpful for him. That's true. Could you imagine him having to go through multiple rounds of debates right now? This isn't 2020. He has declined much since then. So that is true. It would not be helpful to Joe Biden. But just because it would not be helpful to Joe Biden, that doesn't mean he shouldn't do it. But that's the DNC for you. They're going to find a way to make things work in Joe Biden's favor. Look at this poll. 79% of Biden voters want president to face debate in 2024. 79% people. But the DNC ignores what we want, and they focus on what's best for the Democratic Party. This piece right here from RFK coming up is very telling about what he thinks about this actual race. Listen.
At the convention, the way the nomination happens, the super delegates are very, very influential, and he'll get 100% of those. So
that part right there. The super delegates are very influential, and Joe Biden will get 100% of those. Now, I'm going to disagree with him just a little bit here. I don't think Joe Biden will get 100%. They got to make it look a little bit legit, right? So I think, they might give some a little bit RFK's way and maybe a little bit Marianne Williamson's way to make it look fair, make it look like this is real. But ultimately, Joe Biden will get the majority of support from the super delegates. It's not about what the American people want. It's not about what the voters want. That's not how a Democratic primary works, unfortunately. We learned this with Bernie Sanders, yes. But this is RFK Jr. admitting to you that he already knows that it's rigged. Everyone put on your alert button. Send the I don't know, the balloons, not the balloons. Send the rockets out. Make a loud clapping noise, whatever you would do at this point in time for shock value. He is letting you know that he already knows that it's rigged. So for some of you that had that question, does he think that they're going to be fair? No, he's telling you he knows. So RFK Jr. is telling you he knows that he's not going to win the super delegates, guys. So if you know you're not going to win the super delegates, then you know you're not going to win the primary. Now, why is that important? Hold on to that piece, because when we get to the next clip, there's something that he says in that interview that contradicts what he's saying right now. And that's important for people to see. Swirling says, why is he running then? Exactly. He knows. Let's go on.
I think he's confident at this point, or his handlers are confident, that he can win the nomination without debating me, and that the debate can do nothing except for put him in jeopardy. So I assume that's it, although I'm not really I can't really look into his head.
He can win the nomination without the debate. He already telling you that Joe Biden can win the nomination without the debate. A lot of people saw this video. This is Russell Brand's channel. Like, it gets like hundreds of thousands of views. So it's really important for the American people to hear this. So yes, we say force the debate. They should have the opportunity to debate. They should. But ultimately, that's not the deciding factor. The deciding factor is the super delegates in a primary. That's what matters. Paula, then why RFK Jr. even running? I know more people are going to come with these questions. Let's go on. There's more.
Given that you yourself are part of the most famous political dynasty in American politics, my assumption is you understand the nature of the relationships between the deep state and the temporal administrations that occupy power in American politics, the significant influence that donations have on policy, the insidious nature of the industry of lobbying, and of course, even the potential consequences of being outspoken. My assumption, Robert, is that you must appreciate that if you are going to stand for candidacy of the Democrat Party, that you are going to be subject to an onslaught of smears and attacks because you are speaking out against the interests of, as far as I can understand, the most powerful elite establishment interests that there are. How are you prepared for that? How do you envisage that you will get your message across, and what kind of attacks do you imagine might take place? And don't get frightened.
Very good question there from Russell Brand. And I say this because first and foremost, go ahead and smash that like button, guys. But I say this because, yeah, like, are you frightened? You know they're going to try to fix it so that you don't gain any traction. Russell Brand is very well aware of that. And how do you get your message out? If the DNC won't let you have debates, how are you going to get your message out? Someone told me the other day, they were like, nobody's challenging Joe Biden. I was like, he has two challengers. People don't know. The American people don't know. Not everybody's in this space. Not everyone is watching independent media. Not everyone actually watches mainstream media. They have no idea. Walk down the street and ask the average person if they know who's challenging Joe Biden. Ask them. Most people have no idea. None. So if you're not having the debates, how are you going to get your message out? Well, one way is these interviews, right? Like doing these interviews. But again, you need to do some with mainstream media. Some of them have. He has done a few on mainstream media. So is Marianne Williamson. But mainstream media is not being fair to them. And even though they've done interviews on mainstream media, again, ask the average American walking down the street who was challenging Joe Biden, and most of them don't know. Most of them do not know. So that is a hurdle. That's a problem that they're both of them are going to face. Now let's go on. Listen to how he answers this.
I'm already under a kind of an onslaught of attack, and I have been for many years. I don't mind the attacks. The censorship is frustrating because you can't really reply or respond to the attacks. But we've developed over the past 3 years during the pandemic a number of ways of talking to people that can end run essentially the mainstream media. So I'm going to take a beating in the mainstream media, but I think through podcasts like this and other ones, I think the nature of media is changing. And
okay, so he acknowledges that he's going to take some type of a beating in mainstream media. This is something I think I wish that Bernie Sanders would have admitted. The media was really nasty to Bernie Sanders. They treated him like crap when he went on to The View, CNN, all these networks. They were so nasty towards him. And it was like he would not say this, what RFK Jr. just said, right? So I think it's good that he's acknowledging, he's letting you know that he knows mainstream media is not going to be fair to him, right? Marianne is doing this too. By the way, she's done so. I know on Twitter, she's called them out a couple of times for not even mentioning that she was running. But the game is rigged. Watch the interview that I just did. I clipped it. Actually, Eric clipped it. There's a clip called the DNC fraud lawsuit lawyers speak out. It's one of my recent clips. Watch that interview. I interviewed the Becks. They were the lawyers that were part of the DNC fraud lawsuit. And they broke it down. They told you, like, look, this is what we found out. This is how it works. This is all, it's all rigged. It's a scam. It's a scam to get money from people. It's a joke.
We've also developed a lot of techniques for working around the media. Even Twitter allows us to talk to a larger audience than any CNN show has. And so it's going to be interesting. I expect attacks. If you ask personally how I deal with it, I feel like I have to stay in kind of a spiritual place and everything I do has to come from that place. And if I do that, if I manage to be able to maintain that connection, that everything durable or enduring or important I do will come from that place. And
this is something I feel like Chris Hedges and Cornel West speak to this as well, because they talk about like their faith, like this is not a secret thing with them, but they've talked about their faith before, and it kind of guides them in a way as to how they approach certain issues and how they react to things, right? I think if you are one of those people where you are religious, one thing I will say is that you have that to kind of look towards, in a sense that when things are not going well, maybe your religion tells you to have faith and things will work out in your favor. So I know, again, Cornel West has been on. He's talked about that. He's talked about his faith, and Chris Hedges has talked about that as well. So I think people that tend to have that type of faith, they tend to rely on that and not so much the naysayers. So I'm telling you this so that you can see this the way that he sees it. So even if I say to him, okay, Bobby, the DNC is cheating you, right? They're doing da-da-da. Like, he'll see and hear all that. But at the end of the day, his faith is probably going to tell him, well, you just got to have faith.
And I'm kind of invulnerable there. And the only thing that is going to hurt me is if I leave that place and start doing things that are self-interested and self-serving and etc.
See, you heard that part? If he leaves that place, if he leaves like his faith and starts focusing on things that are self-serving and like self-interest. Remember, he's like a environmental lawyer. So he's spent like his whole career basically trying to help people. And so that's how some people look at it. Not everybody is religious, but some people are. And they do feel like they can point to their faith as a way to give them a shining light, so to speak, in a time when there's despair. It gives them some type of hope.
And right, I knew it. There is a relationship between a deep spiritual connection and feeling safe in this world. Myself, if I may call you Bobby, I vacillate between service and knowing that there are greater ideals that we must appeal to, that there is real hope for the world, and then sometimes sort of collapsing like a souffle made of vanity into...
What? Oh my God. None of your business. Did God tell Cornell to vote for Biden? None of your business. How could you say that? Oh my God, we got comedians in the chat. Yikes.
The sort of self-centeredness and ego and my own wants. What practices do you have to sustain that? And also for you, I feel like that you must have been exposed across your lifetime through your family history, through the access that you have to the real potency of the threat that you face. I get frightened because I know, like, you know, that if you speak out, you'll be attacked by the media. Who knows how far those kind of attacks could go, what consequences. You know, sometimes that gets me, and it really tests my faith. It tests my spirit. So I'm heartened to hear you say that, but also astonished that it is effective when you know what the consequences of speaking out against entrenched power could be.
What is happening here? Roger, thanks for the super chat. His faith is telling him to run in a corrupt party. Roger, you guys are so... Oh my God. Oh my God. You guys are bad tonight.
Well, you know what, Russell, I look back and say, I mean, I was raised in this kind of milieu where we were constantly talking about my father was a military historian. He would come home every night and tell us about the battles that changed history. My grandmother, my father took us on tours, and my Uncle Teddy, after they died, took us on tours of all the Civil War battlefields. We grew up touring the Revolutionary War battlefields and walking the Freedom Trail in Boston and, memorizing poems about Paul Revere and all of the kind of, heroic Victorian ballads, from Rudyard Kipling and Alfred Lord Tennyson and all of those. And we recognized that there was a generation of Americans in 1776 who put their lives on the line, who put their property, who put their reputations on the line, their fortunes, in order to give us the constitutional rights that we have today. And they all said if the subsequent generations weren't willing to make similar sacrifices, that those generations would lose those constitutional rights. And I watched during the pandemic, really in shock, all of the Bill of Rights, with the exception of the Second Amendment, being assaulted. I saw first they came after freedom of speech and freedom of expression. They began censoring me openly, and many, many other people, just doctors.
I don't think we're going to be able to stay on YouTube for very much longer because I just feel like you're...
And I have to pause it there. Oh, wait a minute. Let me see. There might be one more question because I can't go past a certain time.
Your tendency is towards free speech and potentially antithetical to the WHO guidelines. So I'm going to say let's move over onto Rumble now, because before we go, this is the question that I want you to answer. Look, you've already said that you feel that the CIA murdered your uncle John F. Kennedy. If you, some of us feel like, well, was it JFK the hero that we believe him to be in the culture, or was he part of the system? How can anybody get into the position of the president without being co-opted by the very forces you describe, the malign intentions that you have outlined in your previous answer? How can you get into that position? And if indeed you maintain that, your father, and of course I expect that you will claim that your father and your uncle were legitimate, virtuous, flawed, but good, principled men, then you must presumably believe that the reason that they lost their lives is connected to those values and principles, and it's simply not possible for you to answer that question on YouTube. I also recognize that you are going after, as far as I can see, the most significant opponents of freedom: the military-industrial complex, the big pharmaceutical industry and the incredible power they're able to exert over mainstream politics, and the control over the mainstream media. And I think if you're going to attack those kind of interests, you cannot do it on a WHO regulated site like YouTube. So click on the link in the description. Join us now on Rumble, where Robert will respond to some of the questions, just some of those questions as well. And if you're watching this on Locals,
he did that part I can play, because some part of that you can discuss on YouTube. There we go.
Sure, and the other ones were people who we knew, who we had known as, whose names he knew as an enlisted man, and who many people respected, but he was skeptical of them from the beginning. And he also was very conscious of Eisenhower 3 days before his inauguration, which I attended as a little boy in Washington. Eisenhower gave one of what we now should regard as probably the most important speech in American history on January 17th, which was my birthday when I was 6 years old, warning Americans about the emergence of a military-industrial complex that would corrode and devour our democracy from within and without, the institutions of our democracy. It would turn America into an imperium abroad and a security state at home. And
just wanted you to hear that part. That part is very important. If you never heard that speech that he was referring to from Eisenhower, it should be on YouTube. Eric, if you can find it, let me know. It's Eisenhower's speech about the military-industrial complex and imperialism. That one's a really good one. It's really good, but Eisenhower's prediction was correct. Now, there's one more question that I know a lot of you have been dying to hear in reference to RFK Jr. And hold on to your seats for this one. You're not going to like the response if you have not seen this yet. So someone did send this to me earlier today, and I was like, whoa, okay, this is what we've been wanting to know. He was on Breaking Points. He was in the studio with Crystal and Sagar, and Crystal asked him a question that I think all of you need to hear the answer to. I couldn't find the whole video. I don't think the whole video is posted yet, but they did post this clip from the interview. Listen to this, guys. Hold on to your seats.
And my final question for you is, do you plan to support whoever the Democratic nominee is? And do you have any intention of running third party if you're running the Democratic primary?
I plan on winning the Democratic primary.
Okay.
So you heard that, right? Let's hear this again, because that's still not the answer that you're waiting for, but this is important.
Do you plan to support whoever the Democratic nominee is? And do you have any intention of running third party if you're running the Democratic primary?
Do you plan on supporting the Democrat nominee? Do you have any plan of running third party or independent if you do not win? Listen to this.
I plan on winning the Democratic primary.
Okay.
Now, he just told you that he plans on winning the Democratic primary. But in the Russell Brand interview, he told you that he knows that the superdelegates 100% are going to give it to Joe Biden. So he was acknowledging to you in the Russell Brand interview that he knew that the superdelegates were going to go in Joe Biden's favor. So if you know that the superdelegates are going to go in Joe Biden's favor, then why on Breaking Points are you saying you plan on winning? Because you know you can't without the superdelegates. Did anybody catch that? Thank you, Teresa. But she pushed back. She pushed back. Listen to this. You know what? Like, I was worried when he gave that answer, and I was like, I sincerely hope she pushes again with that, because he didn't really answer the question, and she did. And listen to this.
But
nomination.
They're rigging things. They're not going to allow debates. It's going to make it very difficult for you. So if something happens and you don't succeed, what then?
I do not have a plan B.
No plan B?
No plan B.
And do you plan to endorse, if Joe Biden is the nominee or Marianne Williams, do you plan to endorse the eventual Democratic?
We'll get to that part. This part here. What's the backup plan?
If Joe Biden is the nominee or Marianne Williams, do you plan to endorse the eventual
I
Democratic
doubt
nominee?
if I would endorse anybody who's supporting the war.
Oh, hold on. That went that way. Sorry. Here we go.
It's going to make it very difficult for you. So if something happens and you don't succeed, what then?
I do not have a plan B.
I do not have a plan B. His words, not mine. So I've been waiting for that question. So now you guys know the answer. Those of you who've been asking me, like, would he go third party or independent? Would he do a dirty break, so to speak, if he doesn't win? And he said he does not have a plan B. Now he goes on to say something else in reference to who he would support. Listen to this.
No plan B?
No plan B.
And do you plan to endorse, if Joe Biden is the nominee or Marianne Williams, do you plan to endorse the eventual Democratic
I doubt
nominee?
if I would endorse anybody who's supporting the war.
So he won't support anyone who's supporting the war. So that's a no to Joe Biden, and that's a no to Marianne, unless Marianne changes her position on that. We know Joe Biden would never change his position on that. He's deep in bed with the military-industrial complex, and that's what this war is really about. It's about the money and profit to be made from this war. It's not necessarily about winning. You don't have to win to make money. So that's interesting. Because remember, when he interviewed with Kim Iverson said, are you going to tell people to vote for Joe Biden if you lose? And he didn't really answer the question. He was like, do you not have faith in my candidacy? She was like, no, I do. I just don't have faith in the Democratic Party. And he didn't really answer it. He was just like, I plan to, win. But now he's telling you, I will not endorse anyone who supports the war. Now she goes on to ask him another question since he said that.
I think that's what my,
So you could endorse Trump then?
I don't see that happening.
You would never endorse President Trump.
I don't. I think we have so many differences in style and approach that I probably would never end up there.
All right. Well, sir, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Gotta get out.
So that was interesting. So doesn't want to support anyone who supports the war, but he doesn't have a plan B. So for those of you asking if he would run Indy or third party, I think that's your answer there, that he doesn't have a plan B. So don't get mad at me. It's his words, not mine. Thank you for the super chat, Zach. We saw the CIA interfering with the general. Taking such a negative stance for the primary seems more about Bernie scars than good political strategy. It's not even about the strategy at this point. It's about the DNC rigging the primaries, which will happen. Bryce, only state that delegates went hardcore one way was here in Nevada. That's interesting, Bryce. Bad cookies, because if he knows he's going to lose, then this is all just a money-making hustle. Boy for love, he will go third party. He says he has no plan B. Maybe you can convince him to have a plan B, boy for love. Peter, he will do a dirty break. I know it. He will run as an independent when the Dems screw him. Maybe Peter and maybe you guys can get together and convince him, give him a plan B. Thank you for the super chat, Zach. I'd rather put out a strong narrative with a plan for what to do when it happens. FYI, his dad was politically executed. I'm sure he knows it's not fair. Yep, he admitted he knows it's not fair. Thank you for the super chat. None of your business. Is his name R. Bernie K instead of RFK, a shill? Interesting. Thank you for the super chat. Zero Campbell. If RFK Jr. put Tulsi in VP slot, he would be hitting all the notes and showing more legitimacy. That's interesting. That would be an interesting combination. I know he said no, he does not plan to run with Trump or anything like that. I haven't heard about anyone else. Thank you for the super chat, Skeptic. Hey, Sabby, I'm new to your channel. You are really good at what you do. Thanks for all the hard work. Thank you so much and welcome. Thank you for the super chat, Stephen R. If you have a need to give money to RFK, give it to indie media like Sabby Sabs. So much more valuable for the left now. Oh, thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you. I would tell people to give their money to mutual aid. Go to mutualaidhub.org so you can help people that need things like housing and food and all of that jazz. Thank you for the super chat, Zach. Worried your RFK Jr. donation will go to Dems? Donate to his on-the-ground action network, Children's Health Defense, supporting families, uninsured, etc. That's a good point, Zach. Now, yeah, he does have that. So there are other things that you can donate to that'll directly help the people. I did hear about that, the Children's Health Defense. Thank you for that, Zach. Giovanni says, Sabby, you don't need to be religious. You may be spiritual also. That is true. That's a good point. And thank you for Zach. You got a lot to say tonight. Thank you for this super chat as well, Zach. Didn't know he has a support network for people all across the country. That's because left hosts are consumed working out Bernie's psychological damage. I think Jimmy talked about that before RFK ran. He was on Jimmy's show a couple times. I think he had mentioned that. That probably was where I heard it from. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. His faith is telling him to let the CIA into his family. Roger! Oh my God. You cannot help. First of all, that's an in-law, and you can't help what jobs your family members has. Like, people try to come after me because of jobs my family members have. You know, be careful with that. And thank you for the super chat as well. Faith telling him don't investigate CIA family members. Roger, stop. Oh my God. You guys are crucial tonight. Jesus. Thank you for this super chat as well, Zach. Chomsky advocated starving children. RFK was challenging the very power many of you were cowering under. Why not try to cover what most leftists missed? You think I could do better at that, Zach? Maybe I could. Thank you for the super chat, Ronwell. I was actually considering becoming district level delegate for RFK Jr. He just needs to pull his glove off against Biden, the DNC, and the fraud lawsuit. And thank you for the super chat, Thomas. So no plan B. Is Joe Biden also RFK Jr.'s good friend? He said he's friends with him. I don't know why everybody's friends with Joe. I'll just be honest with you. And thank you for the super chat, Zach. You could take not having a plan B either way. You could, I guess, but you need to have a plan. And thank you for the super chat. None of your business. Did he vote for Biden in last election? I think he did support Biden. If I'm not mistaken, I think he said he did. And thank you for the super chat, Steve. Sabby, why he tell you his plan B now? Of course he has a plan. That's a good point, Steve. We're going to talk about this tonight on Call In. You guys got a lot to say about this. And thank you for the super chat, Lawrence. Sabby, in most states, the election laws prohibit running third party once you have lost a primary, called sore loser law. What about independent, though? Right? Because you can't just, by the way, you can't just up and jump and say, I'm going to run under the Green Party now. Like, I don't think the Green Party just lets anybody run through the Green Party. I think they're more serious about that. That like, you need to be a Green Party member and you have to agree to like their platform. I don't think you can just jump in the Green Party and say, okay, I lost, so now I'm going to run through you guys. I think they're a little bit more particular, just keeping it real. But thank you for that.